We'll need you, dear. Let me see my reflection. There's a portal.
Yeah, I have a photographer right here.
Oh, you have a photographer?
No,
Are you some celebrity or something?
Are you? I mean, you are.
I mean, I am. An illumination spell classic. Now, I'm feeling a tug somewhere. Somewhere real familiar. A fake town, perhaps. Hi, dear. I'll be back. Happy Halloween.
That's right. It's getting pretty spooky out there, if I do say so myself. Hey, everybody, wait for the Kingdom Report. So glad to be back with you. You know, we love rewarding you for watching or listening to this show. All you got to do to win your very own copy of my new book, Standalone, The Walt Disney Way, is head on over to the Kingdom Report on YouTube. Right after the live show is over, leave the comment, Living with the Land. Living with the Land is the phrase that pays this week. You have between now and Monday morning at 8 a.m. Pacific time in which to enter. If you are the winner, we will reach out to you and get this book shipped your direction, all by leaving Living with the Land in the comment section beneath this video right after the live show is over. And on today's broadcast, we're going to be talking about how a perk for the Disneyland monorail has returned. A new manatee has arrived at Epcot to replace the one that left the last time we talked about that area of the park. The new Disney CEO, who will it be? Well, there are two contenders emerging at the moment. And that last CEO, Bob Chapek, well, it turns out he may have been undermined the entire time by who? Bob Iger. Oogie Boogie Bash, must-dos, and so much more as Kingdom Report Live begins for you next.
To all who come to this happy place, welcome.
There is nothing like a Saturday in Southern California. Your Disney family is here as we take that live look outside at the Disneyland Resort. Pixar Pier in the distance on an unusually overcast day. Feeling like fall out there. I'm sure just before we get one last blast of summer. I feel like that always seems to happen to us. Right before it turns 100 degrees again, it's at least cool this morning. Hey everybody, Wade for the Kingdom Report, back with you once again. So wonderful to be as part of your weekend here at the Warner Brothers Studios Media District, beautiful Burbank, California. Around that corner from the Walt Disney Studios, we exist, and we can't wait to bring you some Disney Parks news and discussion, and a bit of a discussion on Bob Chapek and Bob Iger's relationship. Revelations here in the past couple of weeks coming up when we talk about it, where New York Times reveals Bob Iger may have been more a part of the sabotaging of Bob Chapek's own tenure than anybody realized.
No.
I say yes. It's entirely possible. We're going to talk about it. We will absolutely talk about it. But here, joining us this week to discuss, as always, our travel agent, our beautiful Princess in Residency, Katrina Manzone, alongside the returning theme park analyst, Tyler Crouch.
Hello.
He's back.
I don't know why I get the Donald Duck every time. Tony's got something against me.
Always quacking over there.
I'd guess so.
This guy.
I don't know what to say. I'm in my fall gear, I'm ready to go. I want it to cool down. Like you said, it's probably going to get 100 degrees again. But let's just not think about that right now, shall we?
I was finally able to wear lipstick without it bleeding.
Mascara running, lipstick Lipstick bleeding, yes.
It's the new. It's Woodstock, but Lipstock. now.
Lipstock? Yeah, my favorite brand. Absolutely. No, it's you coming back from the campaign trail on that run for Disney CEO.
He was busy.
I was very busy,
Hitting up all the swing states.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, that's exactly what I was doing. How'd you know? Yeah. I'm going to Florida soon, so I'm excited about that. Gonna be gone again, so it's just nice to be here for this episode at least. Just work has been really crazy, and
Who are you, Garrett?
Jeez. And I just haven't been able to join you guys, but I really miss it, so I'm happy to be back.
Well, we are delighted for your return as always. Makes it.
Oh, thank you.
The studio audience loves it too.
Thank you, studio audience.
Always a blessing to have you upon us, and always a treat to have the two of you side by side.
Oh.
Oh, yeah.
Oh.
I love my wifey.
That's what I'll say.
High five.
Oh.
That was just super awkward. I went in for the 5.
She's got it.
Wow.
You don't need to worry about it. She's all over it.
It did it.
High five.
That wifey.
For herself. Well, we encourage you to grab yourself a cup of something good, fill it up, grab a cup, raise it like so. It is time for the show toast. You know we can't kick off a new show without toasting it. This week, the returning Tyler Crouch has the honors.
Well, I'm going to get a little bit corny for a second.
Don't make me cry.
As we were just talking about, I've missed this. I love doing the show. I love being here with everybody. And so this week's toast, I just want to give to you guys, the audience.
Wow.
I'm very appreciative that you guys stick around and hang out with us. And I know we don't get to a show every weekend, and I haven't been to multiple shows recently. And it makes it worth it to see all the fun people on the chat and hanging out, with all you guys talking Disney, which is the thing we love. And thank you. Appreciate you guys in the audience or in the studio too. I mean, wow.
We are an audience.
And it's good to be back.
Cheers to that. Amen. Well, I doubly cheers this fantastic community that continues to be so supportive and kind to all of us, and absolutely worthy of our accolades and appreciation. So yes, a toast to you.
Yes.
Our dear audience friends. Absolutely. Very nice. Well, we do have some headlines to get you caught up on. That is time for the Disney News Review. Let's go. Disney News Review time, taking a look at some of the biggest stories from across the Walt Disney Company in the past week. Out in Orlando, WDW News Today reports a new manatee friend now calls the seas with Nemo and friends at Epcot home after Lil Joe's previous companion Lou was recently relocated. The new manatee is named Inigo, and this past Friday was his first day out in guest view at the seas. His weight and history have yet to be added to the board inside of the seas. Joe's former companion manatee Lou was moved from the seas to another rehabilitation center on September the 11th. Inigo has taken his place, according to the Orlando Sentinel. Lou's relocation was done as part of a broader set of manatee moves around the state under the recommendation of the Manatee Rehabilitation Partnership and the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Services. Out in Anaheim, the Orange County Register reports monorail riders have another seating option with a different point of view for the first time in 4 years during the 13-minute round-trip journey on one of the longest rides at Disneyland. The Disneyland monorail now allows riders to sit in the nose cone section with the driver for the first time since the Anaheim theme park closed in March of 2020 due to the COVID-19 pandemic. The nose cone rider option returned over the weekend along with the monorail following a month-long refurbishment. The monorail's front seats provide a unique point of view as the ride moves between the Tomorrowland to downtown Disney stations. And at the Walt Disney headquarters, Academy Award-winning filmmaker Jared Bush has been named Chief Creative Officer of Walt Disney Animation Studios, effective immediately, reporting to Disney Entertainment co-chairman Alan Bergman, while Jennifer Lee has decided to return to filmmaking full-time to steward the Frozen franchise for the studio. Serving as Chief Creative Officer for Walt Disney Animation Studios since 2018, Lee will be directing and writing on Frozen 3 and writing Frozen 4 with Mark Smith. She will also executive produce the latter. 30-year Disney veteran Clark Spencer, Oscar-winning producer of Encanto and Zootopia, continues as president of Walt Disney Animation Studios. And finally, Block Mickey reports in the ongoing battle for Disney CEO Bob Iger's job, a new report from Variety gives Disney Entertainment co-chairman Dana Walden a lead over Disney Experiences chairman Josh D'Amaro. Iger's current contract expires at the end of 2026, and Iger has repeatedly stated that succession planning is his number one priority right now. A month ago, the Walt Disney Company Board of Directors named board member James P. Gorman to chair its succession planning committee as the battle for the top job heats up. It's looking more like a two-horse race as far as internal candidates go. The Variety report doesn't turn over any new leaves, but it does say that nearly a dozen industry players, corporate rivals, and Disney sources said that Walden has the edge over D'Amaro right now. Disney hasn't named any potential candidates and even said as recently as last month that external candidates are being reviewed. That said, chatter has almost always been focused on the 4 division heads as the most likely candidates. The other 2 division heads, Jimmy Pitaro at ESPN and entertainment co-chair Alan Bergman, seem to be long shots at the moment. If Walden were to get the nod, she would be the first female CEO of the Walt Disney Company. Critically, her ties to Hollywood are significantly stronger than failed former CEO Bob Chapek. That lack of connection to the creative side of the company proved to be an oversight for Iger when choosing Chapek in the past. Walden's stock may be at an all-time high right now, thanks to a list of recent wins following a record-breaking showing from Disney at the recent Emmys. Under Walden's leadership, ABC has secured its position as the #1 entertainment network for 4 consecutive seasons, the first time that has happened in more than 25 years.
One of the bigger stories from the last few weeks that seems to have been brushed aside just a little bit, really hasn't gotten the attention I think it probably should be getting, seems to be sort of fading away into the shadows, is a story about the New York Times that came out regarding what they called a palace coup at the Magic Kingdom, saying the inside story of how Bob Iger undermined and outmaneuvered Bob Chapek, his chosen successor, and returned to power at Disney. This story is like a novel. It goes on and on. One of the longest New York Times stories I think I've ever read in my life, but goes into such incredible detail as to how not only Bob Chapek was chosen to become Disney CEO, but how instrumental Bob Iger was in that selection. And then ultimately, I don't know, taking a knife to the back of the guy throughout his tenure, and then coming out on the other side saying, yeah, he deserves to be pushed out. I'll save the day. Get me back in there. It is the most bizarre Shakespearean type of story I think I've ever read, and one that very, very closely aligns with the last time there was a huge shakeup of CEO at the Walt Disney Company, where, believe it or not, Bob Iger was involved, only it was Michael Eisner in the Iger seat that time. Michael? And it was one of those situations where it was truly Shakespearean. James B. Stewart, the writer of this article, was also the author of the book Disney War, that chronicles very much in depth what was happening in the final years of the Eisner era at the Walt Disney Company, and how Roy Disney, the nephew, lost all faith in Michael Eisner. And in the end, the transition of power happened between Eisner to Iger. Iger came in as a very unique individual, somebody who probably had his own wits about him as to how he wanted to make an impact on the Walt Disney Company. And over the course of time, Iger grew more and more into that power seat, grew more and more into that control. And every time he was supposed to give up that power, somebody wasn't good enough in the last minute, and they extended that contract. Well, now this story goes into depth as to how exactly Bob Chapek was chosen, and once he was, what happened next. So we'll start here, Tyler. The idea that Chapek came in when he did, the article does a great job outlining the fact that this is so bizarre to me. Iger was like pushing to get Chapek into that seat faster than anybody wanted. He was pushing to get Chapek into the CEO controlship right before the pandemic shut down. And I don't know if the two are connected, but the parallels seem very interesting to me, where Bob Iger knew the parks in Asia were being shut down. had an understanding of what was happening globally and that it was probably coming here, and was pushing Chapek through the approval process to get him into the driver's seat immediately, even foregoing the traditional board reference checks that are needed to go sit with the board and be approved, shoved him through just to get him in the driver's seat, and Chapek running with things. That's where the story really kicks off at. Any idea, any theory as to how or why Bob Iger thought Chapek needed to grab the keys so fast without fully being vetted?
I don't know if we'll ever know the true answer to that question. I feel like Iger will die with that knowledge in his brain, but I do feel that there's a good chance that, as you said, Iger knew the parks were going to be shutting down and things were probably not looking so good, and maybe he was like, I could use a little vacation, you know? And he just decided, well, maybe we need a fall guy. I mean, it's a very real possibility. But it seems kind of crazy to me that he would just put this whole company on the line for something like that obscene. So, I mean, I couldn't really tell you what his love of Chapek was before this all started, because with the whole New York Times story, it just seems like he really just did not like him the entire time. I mean, so the only thing I can think of is that he just kind of knew that he wanted Chapek to be a fall guy. I mean, but, you know, I'm not really surprised that things transpired the way they did, because it just seems that the whole entire time, even when Iger did let him make certain choices, like creating that Disney Media and Entertainment Group, like doing the restructuring of the company, and even like the whole thing in Florida with the Don't Say Gay bill, all those things, like, I felt like Chapek just shot himself in the foot left and right, and there was kind of nothing he could do to repair his reputation after that, because in my eyes, a Disney CEO is kind of like a Disney character themselves. Like, they are the face of the biggest media company in the world, or one of the biggest, and they have to appeal to so many different people. They have to appeal to, you know, the creatives, the moneymakers, and the audience all at the same time. And it just seemed like from the beginning, everything that Chapek was doing was undermining all of those people all at once. And it didn't seem like there was any, like, Iger got in the way. Like, of course he did. But, and now that I'm even saying this out loud, I'm thinking maybe Iger even let him make those mistakes on purpose, you know, knowing that this was going to go poorly for him. But it just really does seem like Iger had the intention of getting back in that driver's seat for quite some time. So I don't know what to tell you. The whole story is pretty wild. The article is very like, he said this and then she said that. So definitely a lot of people were talking, but it almost read like a bedtime story or something, it was like very
long.
It was
bedtime story.
It was like a dramatic, you know, reconstruction of the events. I feel like
I said, full scale novel. This is how it came across, right?
Yeah.
It just went on and on.
Yeah, for sure. But yeah, I really do feel like the restructuring of the company, it made all the creatives hate him. The Don't Say Gay bill thing, like the fact that they didn't do anything made them look even worse. And then it started creating so much attention around them that when he finally did come out and say, oh, I'm so sorry, I should have been your ally, then he went too far in the other direction. So he pissed off all the LGBTQ people, and then he pissed off all the conservatives, like, all in one go.
But then Iger comes out and goes and pretty much sticks up with what Obama said, which undermines Chapek, because
that's true too, yeah.
Because then everybody's like, oh, Iger, he's the best, and then Chapek's like, what the fuck?
Well, and this draws the comparison here. Let's not forget that the company adopted a policy. It wasn't Chapek's.
That
company,
was the next
right,
thing.
adopted that policy of Disney's above the fray of politics. Let's not get involved. Let's not say these things. And then Iger, as you mentioned, jumped on top of something that President Biden had said at the time, that this was going to endanger the lives of young LGBTQ youth. And on top of that, was going to be something that was very dangerous to the public if it got passed, which then led Chapek to go, well, wait a minute. I thought we weren't saying anything. I thought like we were being quiet. And so it made him feel even more forced to now, well, do I need to get out in front of this again? What's happening here? And then the board didn't know what to do. I found throughout this entire story, that board of directors was just as messed up as Iger was in this process for not doing the due diligence, for not holding people accountable, for not doing what needed to be done to safeguard the company throughout. They seem to be just as at fault here as Iger had been throughout the entire process. Very disappointing.
I mean, all I can say is that this article does seem like it's more sympathetic towards Chapek than anybody else. And I think, as we discussed like before the show, I do think Chapek was whispering in some ears here. And so this just seems like it's more written from the perspective of, you know, oh, Chapek got screwed, you know, and I don't know if I necessarily agree with that. I think things were smooth for him. Definitely not. But like, if he actually made these good decisions to begin with, I feel like he wouldn't have been in this position at all. And the other thing too, like going back to what we were just talking about, like, not only did they dug themselves into a corner because they came up with the solution of not doing anything political, like you said, but then they also like do so much marketing around like, oh, the inclusion key and everybody's welcome and all that. Like they can't talk out of both sides of their mouth at the same time, and that's what they were trying to do, and so. Again, like there were huge companies that signed against that bill, and like Nike, for example, and everything. And those companies didn't get a bunch of flack. Like the reason is because they just quietly signed it. They said, "Yeah, this is right. We should just love people, you know." And they just quietly signed it, and they went on about their day. And everybody was like, "Okay," but Disney just hemmed and hawed so much about it, and they just took so much time, and then they made it so public. And also, I mean, not to mention that God, I can't even remember his name anymore. That the Florida governor, what is that guy's name?
DePupus.
Yeah, DeSantis. Yeah, he made it this whole political like platform for himself too. So it was like a just a perfect storm of all these bad things happening at the same time.
I know that in the story, Mr. Chapek was scheduled to make his formal debut as chief executive at Disney's annual shareholder meeting. Mr. Chapek was nervous, they wrote, saying all the more so because public speaking had never been his strength. Well, we know that, don't we?
Yeah.
Before the meeting, Disney's investor relations personnel assembled thick briefing binders covering every conceivable data point in question that might arise. Armed with these binders, Mr. Iger and Mr. Chapek settled into the front compartment of the Disney Gulfstream jet for the 4.5-hour flight to Raleigh, North Carolina, the site of that year's meeting for what Mr. Chapek expected would be an extended preparation session. Several passengers, including Mr. Chapek, recalled that Mr. Iger pulled out his iPad and started flipping through recent photographs, telling the stories behind them. There were photos of himself with Mr. Paul McCartney and recent dinner guests in New York. Mr. Chapek said he tried to steer the discussion back to the annual meeting, but Mr. Iger interrupted, saying, "Did you see my new yacht design?" Flustered by Mr. Iger's digressions, Mr. Chapek got up and moved to the plane's rear compartment. This went on to say that later, when Iger, I guess, got around to moving beyond his yacht, he decided he was going to then get together with Chapek and go over the briefing binders, which apparently Chapek was already looking into. And he said, if I have any questions, I'll come talk to you guys, which, according to the story, instantly made Iger go, I guess he doesn't want to learn from us. I guess he doesn't. And it started there on his debut day, right, where he's supposed to go in front of everybody as the first real time as CEO. It began there. I thought that was fascinating. Later in the story, during the COVID shutdown period, as things were starting to collapse around the world, California Governor Gavin Newsom called Bob Iger before announcing that he would restrict public gatherings in California because of COVID, but he thought Disneyland might stay open. The governor didn't want people to panic, and he feared they might, if Disneyland closed. Mr. Iger argued to Mr. Newsom that keeping the theme park open was a bad idea, given the health risks to guests and employees. Mr. Newsom later publicly praised Mr. Iger's advice and cooperation. Chapek didn't disagree with the decision to close the parks, but he was furious that Mr. Iger had excluded him from that decision. Iger also overruled a furlough decision Chapek was about to make for theme park cast members until a COVID relief bill was approved by the government. Mr. Chapek's wife told him he was little more than Bob Iger's lapdog. So,
he has no hair.
I can't pet him. So that's why he grew the beard for his wife, right?
Yeah.
No. So I look at those things at the very beginning of his tenure as CEO. Wow. Like immediately Iger was playing a game. It seems like, like your priorities are not my priorities, and I'm still in control. I'm still the executive chairman. You still technically report to me. What a hard platform to start off of, knowing that was what was looming in the background. And the list goes on from there, obviously. But this is something where I think we have given this guy, Bob Chapek, a very hard time.
Yeah, we did.
We have, and for many good reasons, right? We have run him through the mud for many good reasons. Yeah, he is not a public speaker. Yeah, he is not a warm character. Yeah, he is not a guy I think you want to spend a lot of time with because it doesn't really seem all that engaging.
As I said earlier, like, the CEO of Disney needs to be a character himself too. Yeah. Like, to be honest, I mean,
you're absolutely right.
Yeah,
needs to be a bit of a showman.
Yeah,
and he isn't. And knowing that Chapek from the start was treated this way, I don't know many good executives in such high-profile positions that could really steer their way out of that, knowing that Iger's probably got a yes-man army behind him.
Mm-hmm.
That's tough. What do you do in that situation? Like, how do you overcome everybody against you from the start?
Yeah.
How do you rectify this eventually? Like, if you already know that,
kill him with kindness.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
Well, I do think, like, even this article, even though I said it sways in Chapek's favor, there's a lot of moments too where he's clearly getting upset at people that, like, maybe he has the right to be upset about, but, like, he shouldn't be going or, like, calling people privately and being like, why did you say that about me, and things like that, which is what happened when the chief financial officer came out and was like, oh, our numbers aren't looking so good right now, and he had no idea she was going to say that, but it was like, how can I not say that? I mean, I kind of agree with her, like, and it's just one of those things where it seems like there were a number of times throughout the story that he came out, like, firing guns. And I hate to say it, but, like, if you're going to be making millions and millions and millions of dollars and you're going to be the CEO of this giant media corporation, then you have to be a little more chill, I feel like. Even though things are not working in your favor, and I get it, I would have been frustrated as all heck too. I mean, I'm not saying he shouldn't have been frustrated, but I just felt like at every turn that he had a chance to make things better, he was making things worse.
So maintain the professionalism a little bit more. I would imagine that would be a hard thing to do when you're being undermined by your executive chairman, who is publicly going behind your back and telling everybody else that he thinks he made a mistake and that you're not cut out for this job after all. In 2020, right, the first year Chapek was in control, the story details nearly everything Mr. Chapek did or didn't do reinforced Mr. Iger's sense that naming Mr. Chapek as his successor had been a huge mistake. Iger expressed his frustration with friends in Hollywood, and word spread. And someone contacted the New York Times media columnist at that time, Ben Smith, to say Mr. Iger was reasserting control. Mr. Smith called and spoke to Mr. Iger. This is, again, they're still working together. Iger hasn't left. Mr. Smith called and spoke to Mr. Iger, who followed up with an email. Quote, after a few weeks of letting Mr. Chapek take charge, Mr. Iger smoothly reasserted control. Mr. Smith wrote. Mr. Chapek read with mounting disbelief as this article came out at the time. Mr. Smith called Mr. Chapek the new nominal chief executive and even speculated that the choice of Mr. Iger's successor may be open again. This is in 2020. He's not even done with his first year. Mr. Smith quoted, Mr. Iger is saying in an email that a crisis of this magnitude and its impact on Disney would necessarily result in my actively helping Bob Chapek and the company contend with it, particularly since I ran the company for 15 years. It's then written that Mr. Chapek contacted Disney's communication executive chief and explained to her that Iger was, quote, killing him. Mr. Chapek didn't sleep that night. Early the next morning, he confronted Iger on the phone. Iger denied that he had spoken to Mr. Smith at the Times, which only further enraged Chapek, who pointed out that Mr. Iger's quote came directly from an email he sent to the Times. Mr. Iger said he didn't understand why Chapek was so upset. What was wrong with saying he was reasserting control in the midst of a crisis? You've cut my legs out from under me, Chapek said. I've never felt worse in my life. That is in the first 6 months of his tenure as CEO. I don't know how these two didn't go to blows eventually. Like, this is nightmarish, like by comparison. You think of how like politics at your job pan out right day to day. Can you imagine being at this level, being one of the most visible executives in the world, and having the other most visible executive treat you like that?
Yeah.
Act this way.
It's gotta
Talk
be
behind your
miserable.
back to the
Yeah.
biggest paper of record on the world stage. Unbelievable.
It's got to be miserable. I take nothing away from how miserable it must have felt on Chapek's side. Like clearly he was being just his legs being chopped out from under him, like he says. I mean, there's no other way to put it. But I think that this whole thing almost seems like it came from like small misunderstandings in the beginning of their in the beginning of his CEO title, because it just seems like when the article starts off with that whole plane ride, like you said, where he went in the back and just sat by himself reading the binder rather than listen about Paul McCartney and stuff. And I think again, like I don't know. There's just something that sounds so weird to me about like. We weren't there. We were only getting a very small snippet, but I just feel that there had to be a more professional way to handle it than to just like get up and walk away and go to the back of the plane. Like, and you know what? Maybe Iger was trying to get him to even just calm down in that moment and just be like, we're hanging out, let's get to know each other a little bit better,
Come help me pick out some, new colors for my yacht.
Yeah, I mean, maybe he was thinking leopard print, and Chapek could have been like, not the leopard print, my dude.
Bro.
Yeah.
I don't know. I think that there's two sides to it, though, because, I mean, again, like, I'm not going to be in favor of Chapek. This was, like, a really bad situation that he was put in. But also, I mean, it's Iger to understand that Chapek, this is his first debut, right? And he's going to be nervous. He wants to prepare. He wants to make sure everything's going to go correctly. He wants to know like how Iger would go about doing a public presentation and try to get notes based off of the people that they were around. Right. And then Iger to kind of just blindly just start chit-chatting about his day and his yacht and all that stuff without recognizing how nervous Chapek could possibly be. And then instead of just getting everything over with and then sitting down with him and just saying, okay, let's just start off with this and then we'll finish up. And then, hey, check out my yacht, like that type of thing versus being like, oh, it's just like, waste. I mean, I have to deal with it too when we're all going in our meetings and life and stuff. When you start off with a meeting and you have like a really important thing to do, you only have an hour to really talk about it. And then people just want to chit chat for about 20 minutes before we actually dive in. And then sometimes you try to assert yourself being like, okay, let's just start our meeting now. No, let's just really start. And then, the higher ups are kind of just wanting to chit chat. I mean, how many more times can you be assertive and then not act like an asshole,
Yeah, and this
in a way.
On one of the most important days of Chapek's life.
And it's like scary,
to
Sure.
present himself.
Yeah.
Listen, I'm not saying Iger handled himself properly.
No.
But
Iger was checked out at that point. He's retiring.
I mean, it was
right?
just like
yeah,
Yeah.
that's true. But I do think there was a way to be like, hey, Bobby, I'm very nervous right now, and I would really like to just go over this book for a little while, and then I would love to talk about your yacht. Like,
I think it's hard for someone to really say that they're nervous because that puts them on like a, what is the word I'm looking for? Like, what's the word I'm looking for?
Or?
No, not a pedestal. Like they're showing their emotions and it makes them feel weak. So he's trying to like withhold that stuff but also try to get stuff done to kind of prepare so then he can, if they want to chit chat, he can still go and prep.
I would
but
argue that
instead he was like,
sure
baby about it.
I would argue that storming off to the back of the plane is also showing like a type of emotion too,
Sure.
And that's kind of the through line that I kept getting through this story is like, yeah, he has a right to be pissed off, but I feel like he keeps getting emotional over and over again.
Maybe he could have handled it differently. Well, later Chapek contacted the chair of the Disney board to share how upset he was and how his reputation was being destroyed by Iger behind his back. Board chair Susan Arnold assured him that this too shall pass and that Iger would be gone in 20 months. Just let it go.
Oh, Arnold.
In a call after the board of directors told both men to knock it off, Iger told Chapek he couldn't handle the truth and that the directors assured him if he didn't think it was working out, he could fire Chapek and return as CEO anytime he wanted.
Yeah, then that part was mind-boggling to me. I was like, okay, that's some Dr. Evil type business right there to just be like.
This is when Iger became a villain to me, right here.
Yeah.
This point in the story made me go, you are drunk with power, sir.
Yeah.
You are.
And he doesn't want to give it up.
Yeah.
Like, it's just, at first he's like, yeah, I want to go retire, do my thing. Wait a minute. But then I have to give up my power and then I have to give up like all
My
this
influence,
stuff. Yeah.
yeah.
Wait a minute.
My dining reservations. I can't get into the fanciest restaurants. What am I going to do? Chapek called the board chair and asked what Iger was talking about after he heard him say, I can fire you and return as CEO anytime. The board chair tried to make light of it, saying, well, Bob. He may think so, but just let it go.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The board of directors tells
just-
you to just, that's Iger. What?
Bad management, man. It was just
Terrible.
Bad all around. And then also
Terrible.
it's just like, how can you step up to be a CEO when you don't even get the office?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like that's
True.
It's just so sad. Like they're like, oh, you know what? He's going to retire. We're just going to let him have the office and we'll just like have him like, just sit there for a little bit and just take a look so you can come in and out whenever he wants and just like give his advice. And then you'd be like, then shouldn't he take the small office over there in the corner with the shared bathroom with everybody else versus having your own bathroom and actually feeling like a CEO?
I wonder if Chapek got a cubicle.
Oh my God, he was in the bullpen.
Cubicle in the corner.
Yeah.
Good luck, buddy. Well, you had mentioned a little bit earlier, Tyler, that restructuring of the Disney media arm that went over like a lead balloon. And they reference that here saying, due to cash flow issues during pandemic restrictions, Chapek moved to restructure Disney's media arm. Iger did not object to Chapek when he presented the idea in person. The same day, the head of Walt Disney Studios called Chapek to say that reorg would not be happening because Iger hates it. Chapek immediately called Iger and asked if he said that to the chairman of the Disney Studios. Iger said, yes, I hate it. Why didn't you say that to me? Bob Chapek asked him. Iger didn't answer. What is the game? Like, why?
But I also wonder, what does that mean? Iger didn't answer. Like, did he just like hang up the phone,
He's
or
like, oh no?
Like that's why I'm saying.
went silent.
That's why some of these things in this article seem a little bit like just hearsay to me. Because what does that mean? He didn't answer. Like, I just kind of don't believe he just like. What did he go
He
like?
faded
Let's
off
talk
into
about
the
my
dust.
yacht trimmings again or something. Like.
I think a fair point to raise here. Not only did they say at the top of this story that this was backed up by numerous inside sources, but that this was passed by Iger and his people, and they didn't have any comment. They didn't come in and correct anything. They didn't come in and say, "Well, no, we didn't go that far. Or that I didn't say that, or that didn't happen." They let it go. Why is that?
I wonder if they're just
Save
trying to
face.
sweep it under the rug. Just
I mean,
like,
and this is fading very quickly for how outrageous all this is. It's
And
not
that's
really being
Iger
talked about.
probably because a couple calls here and there and get media involved and whatnot, and slowly it's just kind of like
New York Times or not, this
push
is
it
not blowing up
aside.
the way that it probably
Exactly.
would or should.
I mean, if I think they've learned their lesson is like when they get out there and say things about, this isn't like political, but it's kind of like
Fuels the fire.
it's business political. I
Yeah.
feel like.
yeah.
Oh, it's definitely
And
politics.
So,
right?
exactly. So they've learned their lesson, and they're like, we can't. If we talk about this, it's just gonna gain traction. It'll get bigger, and I mean, they don't want this to get bigger, obviously. Either way, no matter who you blame, this looks bad on the whole company. Like, because either
nobody did their due
nobody,
diligence.
yeah, nobody did a good job in this whole situation. Let's be honest, because the fact that he was even able to be CEO when it seems like everybody wanted him to fail anyway, like, I don't know. And we don't know what Chapek was necessarily like behind closed doors. Like, maybe he was weird to everybody there, because he was weird to the whole
The
fandom.
public perception is he's weird. He's
So,
a weird guy.
I mean, maybe he was exactly like that behind closed doors, and everybody was like, oh, I don't want this guy to be my boss.
doesn't
Like,
have
who
the
knows?
charisma.
You know?
Yeah, that charisma was non-existent. Well, let's not forget when Scarlett Johansson sued the Walt Disney Company when Black Widow came out. Obviously, it was in the midst of the pandemic, and they put this mainly to streaming, right? So Black Widow went to Disney Plus. A huge portion of her income that was supposed to be generated from the film was supposed to be tied to box office receipts. Well, we all know what happened during the pandemic, and that is nobody's going out to see movies. And so she sued Disney. Well, if we all remember that time and what happened, this blew up in Chapek's face as he can't handle Hollywood. He can't handle talent. In a statement approved by Bob Iger, Disney called the suit especially sad and distressing, accusing Ms. Johansson of a callous disregard for the impact of COVID on theater goers, and said she'd already been paid $20 million. Talent relations fell under Iger's purview as creative head during that time. Chapek also contributed to the contents of the statement and signed off on it, but this was Iger's statement. And it completely blew up in Chapek's face as, this guy can't handle Hollywood. Why is he the head of the studio? Why is he in charge? Why is he responsible for this company? Iger got no blowback whatsoever in any of this. And this was his, and we all know, I was talking to Tony before the show, remember the strikes? Remember what Iger was saying during the strikes? Right? This is par for course. We have evidence that he thinks very differently about those little workers, those stars.
Yeah.
And so now we've got a trail. Now at least we have some evidence that he acts this way. You know, he seems to be this way. Iger's goodbye party comes as he is finally leaving the company, right? Iger and his wife decided to host their own party at their home in Brentwood. Mr. Iger chose a date when he knew Chapek would be in Orlando for an event. Do you remember covering this?
Yeah.
Right?
Been a
You
while.
remember us talking about how outrageous it was that Chapek canceled in Orlando? He was supposed to be there, and he just decided not to be there.
Yeah.
Chapek canceled the trip and showed up to the party. The event of roughly 80 guests had Chapek at the farthest table from Iger's. Iger gave a long speech of thank yous to the people at the event, instrumental in his career from the beginning. When reaching current day, Iger said, I think I'll just stop there. Thank you all for coming. There was no praise and no further mention of Bob Chapek. And in Iger's final executive session with the board, during an executive session without Chapek, Iger began by apologizing for not having had more interaction with board members since their meeting in Hawaii. Then he said, there are things that I feel I must leave you with, that you must know, because there are things that you need to watch. He then unleashed a broadside. Iger asserted that under Chapek, the collegial culture he'd built over 15 years was crumbling. Disney was a company that depended first and foremost on creativity, and Chapek's digital reorganization had damaged Disney's creative energies. The company, he said, had become distracted by a deep rift. Chapek and his allies on one side, Disney's creative executives and the Hollywood the talent community on the other. After learning this in conversations with allies at the company, Chapek started referring to Iger as an assassin.
It's just so crazy.
Shakespearean!
It's just like, it makes me, this article, because like, I mean, this article is kind of like a summary of kind of what all those baby articles throughout the couple years have been, right? And just kind of pushing them together.
Yeah, it's tying everything together that
And then
we had
now we're
reported
like,
on for years, right? Yeah.
But like having someone undermine you the whole time when you're supposed to take over is so high school.
Yeah.
And it's so mean girl status that it's just disgusting in a way where you're like, oh yeah, don't worry, you'll be, you know, the head top dog. And then there's always like, yeah, you can say that. And then they say it and they go, on my side, I would like to do this, this, and this. And then pretty much undermine you the whole time. And then everybody's just like, I can't believe you said that, Chapek. Look what Iger said. I mean, he's the one that actually has more like rapport with all these things and is more and then Chapek being like, what the hell? And then Iger's the one that told me to do this, but he doesn't want to be that petty person to be like, but Iger approved. I asked him about this and then he said that's okay. But then Iger turns around and then tries to be like the good guy instead of Iger trying to correct Chapek, being like, no, man, this is what you need to do. And then making Chapek be the hero. It's like Iger can't stop wanting to try to be the hero, right? It's just so gross. It just makes me really sad. It's not cool.
It does feel like they're running for student body president.
It is. It's just so sad.
The Bobs.
And then like the whole like the wife.
Thank you.
Like Iger's wife, pretty much like being a cold shoulder as soon as Chapek tries to go to the dinner.
Yeah.
It's just like you could already tell they wasn't welcome, and always having that like even what was the board member that tried to undermine Chapek, trying to get him fired. You know, it's just like no matter what you do, there's always someone with a dagger ready to stab you in the back, and it's not even like it's not a healthy environment.
Sure.
No matter where you go, you always have to turn and make sure no one's there. And it's like, how can you be a good CEO when you always have to look behind your shoulder and you can't trust anybody? It's like that's pretty much what it is. You can't
I would
trust
expect these
a thing.
things in a position like a CEO. I would expect these politics. I would expect these dirty tricks, but not from Bob Iger. I would never have expected that to come from the guy I'm replacing.
It's so Jay Leno.
He's retiring. Tony said
It
the
is.
same
It is
thing.
so Jay Leno.
Jay
Yeah,
Leno.
that's so true. I haven't even thought about that, but yeah. Does that mean that Bob Chapek is Conan O'Brien? Because I don't like that idea.
I know.
Yeah, that's not a real comparison. You're right. Let me finish it up here. Iger insisted he'd put Disney behind him in retirement, vowed not to talk about Chapek unless others brought him up. Evidently, many did, because Chapek fielded a steady drumbeat of unnerving calls from people who had met with Iger in retirement. They told Chapek that Iger had heaped criticism on him and wanted to talk about little else. Chapek complained about Iger's whisper campaign to the board chair, Susan Arnold, and other board members, some of whom had independently heard about Iger's trash talk. But now that Iger had officially retired, the board had no real leverage on him. We fast forward, we know that ultimately, after a string of missteps and especially PR, as we were talking about earlier, major PR disasters, ultimately the board pivoted, decided let's bring Iger back in a Hail Mary sort of situation. And now he's back with a contract extension having already happened again. So will this guy ever not be CEO? Who knows?
How many more yachts is he gonna afford?
I don't know if we'll ever not see him not be a CEO, but at any rate, an incredible story that really changed my perspective on Bob Iger. As you know, I went from respecting the guy and seeing him in a very different light than I do now. And it reminds me of the Harvey Dent quote: "You either die a hero or live long enough to see yourself become the villain."
Wow.
And that is Bob
Dang,
Iger.
Harvey.
Yeah. Bob Iger has become the villain, and that's terrifying to me because he should have. Remember when I said when he came back, you remember me telling you guys, I think this is a mistake for him. I think this is dangerous for him to do. I think his legacy will be tarnished if he comes back. Like, he left in a heap of goodwill. Everybody loved him, right? Oh, you know, think of all of the wonderful memories, all the warm and fuzzies. He's gone. But him coming back, I thought, he's going to hurt his legacy somehow. There's just too much going on. And now we learn these things about him. And it's so disappointing to me because I want to be able to respect the head of the company that we all love and cherish and think is great. He's just as bad.
Yeah.
Like, you know, and maybe that's a lesson for all of us. Don't put people on a pedestal. I don't know, but
And I've also learned today that Chapek is Batman. I didn't know that.
Again, just like
And Conan O'Brien.
just like Conan, I don't think that's a good comparison. You're right. Yeah. At any rate, thank you both for your thoughts, and we're going to take a quick break. We'll be back to talk Oogie Boogie Bash at California Adventure. You stick around. There's more Kingdom Report live coming up for you next. You know, Walt Disney, he is seen as sort of this mythical creature nowadays, this magical man that could do no wrong, and yet he spent most of his life steeped in failure. From heartache to betrayal to death and even a breakdown of his own. It's often said that artists are tortured souls, and I think it's safe to say that Walt Disney was a tortured soul by his own standards most of his life. Walt Disney had to do some of the hardest things any person can do, and that is convince others of unimaginable dreams he had solely in his head. And oftentimes he had to stand alone in his own visions to make them happen. He was surrounded by family. He was surrounded by fawning fans in the public wherever he went. And yet, so often he had to stand alone in his decisions and his choices. Only he understood what it was he was trying to do. He's more like you and me than I think a lot of us assume. Stand Alone, The Walt Disney Way. 10 Lessons for Harnessing Your Own Magic. A new book by me, Wade Heath. Available at Amazon or wherever books are sold. Be inspired by Walt Disney all over again. Time for the Disney List. Taking a look at some of the best and maybe not so great things about the Walt Disney Company. This time around, looking at the Disneyland Resort. California Adventure is the place what not to miss at the 2024 Oogie Boogie Bash inside California Adventure. Tyler and Katrina had a chance to head on out to the Oogie Boogie Bash this year. What did you guys see? What should we not miss?
You go first.
Okay. For me, the Villains Grove. I mean, that's like both of Tyler and I's like number one. You cannot miss it.
Can't miss it.
When you say it out loud and when I describe it, it doesn't sound that great. But when you get there and you're like in it, it's just so amazing because like pretty much it starts at dusk. So what time did it start for? Like, because we went in August, so the sun still hasn't really gone down yet. And it takes a little bit longer.
I think it started a little before 8, but
yeah,
but now that the
8.
sun is going down, it'll start earlier.
It starts earlier, and so it was a little short, but we waited for it, and as soon as you get in, and it's like dusk, and it's kind of dark, and you walk through, and it's all about lights and sounds, and then it kind of like triggers your emotions, right? There are no characters, and you just kind of go through the villains, right? And it's just like this, and you follow the wisps as you try to make it through the villains and to make it out of
the grove.
The grove.
Wisps leading
the wisps,
way.
And you just hear it, and it's just like it just like tickles your emotions and everything. It's
your
just
senses.
your senses. It's just so amazing. It just I love it.
Yeah, that's actually, I mean, that's on my list too, but it is one of those things where you walk in and just the vibes are immaculate. Like they really, every direction there's something happening, and the effects are so cool. They set up all these projectors everywhere, and just I mean, walking through there every year, even though it's been around for a number of years now, it still is like probably my favorite thing to go and see, because it really does just like transform that whole little kids playground into something different, something much more malicious and sinister. So I love it. I love I especially kind of like the Lion King part, and there's like all these
hyenas.
There's hyenas, but also just like the tufts of smoke that are like bubbling up everywhere, and it's just like you come across the drawbridge, and you look over to the right, and there's just this huge open field that's all foggy, and the smoke is bubbling up, and
Yeah.
I mean,
and all you
it's
hear is
amazing.
like marching sounds and everything. It's just, one after another, and then you kind of like turn the corner and you see like the hyenas marching, and you're like, oh shit,
They're coming.
yeah,
Sinister Playground. Look out.
sinister, scary.
Sinister.
Jace Louise.
And there isn't an evil clown there though, so don't worry
Wow.
about that.
Yeah,
Most
that's true.
most Sinister playgrounds have an evil clown. This one's all good though.
Couldn't
so.
handle that.
I mean, I
Yeah.
guess if you really want to talk about the Queen of Hearts, I mean, she's kind of a clown.
Got her.
Whoa.
Get it?
What's your next one?
I'm going to tell her.
Anyway, but I think that also the just like going through the treat trails are also very fun to do. And I would wait towards like the end of the night to kind of do it. Kind of like after the first parade is when people kind of just start dispersing because they've already done the treat trail. So then they just wait for the parade because they have to do the first parade. And so I would just say wait until you do the treat trails because then there's nobody in line and then you kind of can just stand around and listen to the characters talk because that's like the whole point of is just to kind of get that one-on-one interaction with the characters and just to hear them talk and whatnot. And I think this year I really liked Hades. I wish that line was always really busy. I mean, because he's new. So we were waiting for his hair to turn red, and I was like, "Come on!" And then
Your hair was
as
turning
soon as I
red
turned around
in the
because we were
process,
ended,
yeah.
that's when it turned, and I was like, "No!"
I tried so hard to get a good shot of his hair turning red, but like every time it was just like,
He tricked us like a couple times too because people would try to bring up Hercules, and he's like, "Hercules," and we're like,
and I'm like, oh, he's gonna get mad. Hold on, and then
didn't
yeah,
happen.
Wow.
but it's funny because actually, I even more granular. I did put Hades on my not miss list. Just I mean, of course, the tree trails in general, but and as Katrina said,
But
like
that treat trail.
but that tree trail was really
trail-
good, and the and the other new ones were Doofenshmirtz, and then they like changed Agatha's costume, and that was
least
it, right?
favorite.
Those were the new ones, right?
Yeah, those are the
yeah.
only-
So the Doofenshmirtz one, I never watched Phineas and Ferb.
Yeah, I did not either.
I've only seen like a little bit here and there, so I know who he is, and I know he hates platypuses,
Plural platypus.
It's
Yeah?
is it just platypus?
I'm not
I know
sure.
he.
Yeah.
Anyway, let's move on.
Flamingos.
So, but it was fun because he kept on using different inventions and stuff, and like they would epically fail, and then like bubbles like would fall from the ceiling or something, and so it was fun that they had this kind of interactive immersion in there. Not interactive, but just this immersion of just things happening around you as well as like up on the stage, but. You know, going further into what Katrina said, like, wait to do the tree trails because, like, Oogie Boogie, Doofenshmirtz, Hades, I mean, the lines were
Long.
up and down Hollywood Boulevard. Like, it's a waste of time. Go do in the beginning of the night. Go do something else because,
Go on rides.
yeah, go on rides at that point. Do anything but eat
Get
some
food,
dinner,
yeah.
like because
Mobile
the
order.
lines were just insane in the beginning of the night, and we were like, oh my god. At first, I was getting worried, like, are we even gonna go see Oogie Boogie because the line is like insane? But it went down as it always does. So
Yeah, and I did like the change too of the characters for Smurfs. I don't know how to say his name.
Doofenshmirtz. Now I'm not sure if I'm saying it right.
Smoofender.
But the way they did the character, because obviously sometimes with Oogie Boogie, the problem is they have to do the character change, right? And so Oogie Boogie will have to leave, and then everybody's in this treat trail, and there's no Oogie Boogie. So you just waited like 10, 15 minutes just to see Oogie Boogie, and he's not there. And you're like, what the hell? And then, or he just barely is coming out, and then you're already leaving, and you're like, ugh. But with Doofenshmirtz, whatever, what they did was he would be like, oh, I have to go check on something, and he would leave, and then he would come out. And there's a new character
yeah.
that would,
It
the
was
same
funny.
character, but a new person would
I
come
was
out.
like, that's not the same
And
guy.
I was like, yeah, you could hear his voice, and I was like, he doesn't sound the same. But it was really clever.
It was very clever.
It was neat how they did it, and I was like, okay, great, because there's a lot of people waiting for this person, and so I could only imagine people being like, boo.
Yeah, I was really worried we were gonna get in there and there was gonna be nobody up on stage, and I was gonna be like, well, now we got to go through again to see him again, like, or to try and see him. But yeah, the way they handled that, where he disappeared, and I was like, oh, he's leaving. Like, my first thought was, no, he's leaving. And then the other guy comes out, and I was like, you got me.
Sneakies.
These guys.
Anyway, but then I think the other one that I would say is just like the parade. it's always just so fun. You get the music vibes going. I feel like if you can handle it, do the second showing. No one's there. And then also Hollywood Boulevard, that section. I feel like there's not that many people everybody tries to gather around by Ariel and in that ride. There's always just like tons of people clustered there. So I would say maybe try to do like the Hollywood side and see the parade if you need to see the first one. But the second showing, it's like no one's going to be there. You could go walk wherever you want and get a spot. Easy peasy. And then they added Mother Gothel, so that was fun too.
Hey,
yeah,
always fun.
Yeah. Nice to see her.
That's
She had a tree trail last year, right?
Yeah, and then they axed her.
They
put her on the parade.
She got demoted. Sorry.
Yeah.
To the procession you go.
Yeah.
And then Hades got promoted and actually got a face. That talk.
How about that?
I do. Yeah.
moves.
the Hades was great. I think he was the best. And the guy. Well, I'm not gonna. I'm ruining all the magic, but I just feel like Hades, he did a great job. He was fantastic. He didn't stop talking. Like some of them like don't know what to say sometimes. I feel like, but
Ernesto de la Cruz, he knows how to do it though.
Oh man, that guy
one's like
works his
probably my
magic.
most favorite treat trail is Ernesto de la Cruz. He always just knows what to say. He loves to like talk to the crowd and everything. There's always just so many people trying to talk to him and like take pictures.
Well, he's a natural performer.
He is a natural performer. Yeah. Sad he died in the way he did, and then he was a murderer.
Remember him?
I
would say.
But yeah, anyway, so I think he's like probably my favorite treat trail.
He's good times for sure.
Agatha, it's a miss. I don't know. We did it. I wasn't really impressed. It was like
even
boring.
with her updated wardrobe.
Oh, it's even more boring.
The wardrobe was like. I don't know.
The only good part was like she has a great laugh, and we caught her like right as she was exiting too to take her little break.
Her witch cackle.
Yeah, so she had a cool witch cackle, but I think it was just she was like probably my least favorite. So and then her line was really long, right? So wait until the end of the night because she wasn't that long.
Yeah, her line was pretty dead. But my last thing here, it's not necessarily you can get this when it's not Oogie Boogie Bash. To be honest with you, so maybe I'm cheating a little bit, but. You know, they have like certain Halloween foods, and there was definitely like they had like tamales out on the boardwalk, which I tried one. I don't know if I'd recommend it. It was like a prepackaged tamale that, you know, was not that exciting. Yeah, like it really was. It was from some other. Well, it's like
in Southern California.
Well, you know how I know exactly. Like, right? I was
Do
expecting
they know
something.
Where they are?
I was expecting something like fun about it, but it literally was like just a reheated tamale. So I just don't. If you see those tamale carts and you're like, oh, I've never seen tamales in the middle of Pixar Pier. Maybe you know you don't. And they don't give you a plate or anything. I was like, how am I supposed to eat? Anyway, that's beyond the point. So
very complicated.
Yeah, the thing that I suggest getting is heading over to Smoke Jumper's Grill because a lot of people only get to go every now and then. And if you're gonna be at Oogie Boogie Bash and you need some dinner, go over to Smoke Jumper's Grill and try the Villainous Burger because it was actually really, really tasty. It's a double patty with pepper jack, chili peppers, arugula, spicy aioli, and it comes with crinkle cut fries.
Ooh.
And the crinkle cut fries are some of the best fries
Can't go
in
wrong
all
with
of
crinkle
California
cut fries.
Adventure. And it was nice and spicy. The little peppers were delicious. It was a still juicy burger. And it sounds like crazy, like double burger. I was like, oh my gosh, I'm going to be like dying after I eat it. But they were very small little patties. I felt like it wasn't. I felt like it was pretty manageable. And again,
and it wasn't that expensive either. It was like $15 with AP discount.
Something like that.
I don't know.
But I would highly suggest if you need some dinner, going over to Smoke Jumpers real quick and getting your mobile order.
Mobile order.
And remember too during the party that like the mobile orders sometimes can take a while because you know there's so many people trying to order at the same time, and so you know maybe get your window like an hour later or something, and because we had to do pretty much that. But they have a lot of different foods to try that I haven't been able to get to yet. Maybe there's something else that would be great out there for me. But yeah, I mean, it was a blast. It was fun. I think I wish that they would have like more new villains, I guess. But other than that, it's still great to see. I mean, one of the other changes too with the villains was Dr. Doom wasn't dipping the shoe this year. He used to dip the shoe, you know, but. And, you know, when they did the cast member previews, there was no shoe or anything. And so people were very upset about that. But they've actually added in the little shoe dangling in a cage above the dip. And it's like shaking, like it's like vibrating with fear, and it's actually kind of more.
It's sad.
It's more villainous, I feel like, than, well, I don't know. Dipping it in and just straight up murdering it is pretty bad, but watching the thing just shake in fear is
The fear of murder is
yeah,
Yeah.
the fear of murder is also very villainous. So, yeah, you know, the other thing too is we saw Pain and Panic,
Oh, cool.
That's
which
right.
Pain and Panic are like never around anymore. So with Hades off doing his thing, they had Pain and Panic over in the middle of Buena Vista Street, and yeah, I mean, and it's always cool to see the Headless Horseman statue too. So
Oh, of course.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
What a signature.
I forgot my magic band because it's like, what's the point of bringing your cool magic band? Because they don't really have any cool things to do with it anymore. But I guess it's the Headless Horseman does something
Oh.
with the magic band, and I was like, oh,
We
so
interacts,
there's
huh?
one thing in
Oh.
all of Disneyland Resort that you could use your magic band
well,
on.
don't forget about Big Al.
Besides, oh yeah, I'm Big Al. So there's two things in all of the
look at
Disneyland
that.
Resort besides scanning
Creeping
it to
up on
get
ya.
through your fast passes area, or your lightning lanes, excuse me. Yeah, so don't forget your magic bands at Oogie Boogie Bash so you can wave to the Headless Horseman.
The one trade-off.
The one
there
thing.
it is. Yes. Well, thank you both. It's great to hear that you had some fun at the Oogie Boogie Bash this year. Halloween is upon us, and if you are heading out to this special ticketed event at California Adventure, now you know what not to miss. So let us know if you are heading there or if you've been to Oogie Boogie Bash before down in the comments. All right, my friends, that about wraps things up this time around. We can't thank you enough for joining us here on Kingdom Report Live. Another wonderful broadcast, another wonderful weekend, and we hope you will join us again very soon. Remember, the legacy of Walt Disney lives on because of people like you and me. We'll see you next Saturday, 3 p.m. Eastern, 12 p.m. Pacific for an all-new Kingdom Report Live.